Whether you're creating YouTube videos around the newest Call of Duty or an older installment, having nice eye-catching thumbnails is critical to help your content stand out. And since a lot of you guys enjoyed the tutorial I did around making Fortnite thumbnails, I decided let's do it again, still using the free Photoshop looking application called Photopea, but for a different game. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do before we even start creating our thumbnail is to think of the idea of what our thumbnail is going to look like. If you feel like you're stuck, you can always use YouTube as a search engine to search up your Call of Duty game and see what thumbnails are working within the space. Now that you've thought of an idea for your thumbnail, it's time to go and gather all of the elements and components that will make up that thumbnail. So in my case, for the example here, I'm creating a thumbnail around best class or weapon setups. So what I'm gonna do is go into Call of Duty and actually get the weapon that I would like to showcase. I just essentially fire the gun a little bit into the air and then reload it, so that way I can capture a screenshot of the weapon being showcased in its fullness. Another thing that I need to get out of the game is a backdrop of one of the maps. So what I'm gonna do is actually go to theater mode and play one of my recent games, and then I'm just gonna go into a free flowing aerial mode so that I can go to any part of the map and get a screenshot of the scenery. If you're playing a Call of Duty that does not have a theater mode, then you can always head to callofdutymaps.com to get images of maps there. Some other elements I'm gonna capture here that I may or may not use are the weapons themselves within the loadout menu. There's a bunch of characters here that I can view in their fullness, and let's not forget all of the emblems that you can screenshot as well within the barrack section of the game. Now there's one other critical element that I'm gonna wanna have in my thumbnail, and that is my face. It's best to take pose still pictures from your camera. If you're using a regular camera, for example, you can set up a timer on it, so that way you have time to set your pose. But getting images of your face this way is far better than trying to capture a random freeze frame from your video. All right, now that we've gotten out of the way of all of the prep work in order to make this thumbnail, let's organize all of those files together within a folder on our computer. Next, we can go ahead and load up Photopea. If you don't have this application already, like I said, it's completely free to download. You can also use it directly online as well, so you don't necessarily need to install something to a computer. So if you do have a tablet, you can technically edit on that as well. The first thing I'm gonna do in Photopea is create a new project. Here, I'm gonna look for the YouTube thumbnail option. And what I typically like to do is do a 1920 by 1080 thumbnail. Changing the dimensions is not a requirement, but I just like to work with a little bit more pixels. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and select create. And now I'm gonna start bringing in my files that I wanna use. So we can start with the background layer. So I'm gonna take that, grab that, bring it on in. Looks good. Just select enter to get out of the transform mode. We have some more images we wanna bring in. I think I'm gonna use this image for our gun. Press enter again. So the first thing I want to do is actually isolate this gun so that it is completely by itself and we don't have all of the other stuff that you see in this image right now. I just strictly want the weapon. We're gonna go to the select drop down and we're gonna choose remove background. Ooh. That looks really good. Now this would have looked even better if I had captured this weapon reload action within theater mode in Call of Duty, because I wouldn't have had this information here on the bottom right, but we can try to finagle it a little bit. First, make sure the original weapon image is selected. I'm gonna go over to the left-hand side here and select this spot healing brush tool icon. If you don't see it there, you could also right click and that will also display your options, but you're gonna wanna select the spot healing brush tool here. And then what we're gonna wanna do next is if we start just writing a little bit, you're gonna see a pop-up come up that says smart object must be rasterized first. And now what we can do is make sure first we right click and we have a nice size for our brush and the hardness is 100% or very close to it. And what we're gonna wanna do now is just highlight this content that we want to disappear. Make sure you highlight it in its fullness, just like I've done. Let go, and then you'll see it disappear. Now, if you're not happy with the results, you can always Control Z and go back and continue to keep trying to do this until you get the results you want. But eventually you should get something that looks decent. The next thing I'm gonna do here is go over to my eraser icon on the left. I'm gonna right click, adjust the sizing of my brush. I'll reduce the hardness just a little bit here to 80%. And now I'm gonna go around my image and look for any areas that look like the background removal tool missed that need to be cleaned up so that my gun image cutout looks as clean as possible. One other thing I'm gonna do with the weapon is I'm gonna go into free transform mode by selecting Command or Control T. And we're just gonna blow this up just a little bit more. Select enter, and that's looking pretty good. Now, some of you guys might be saying, hey, this thumbnail is good to go. I mean, what else do you need? Well, I think it's a little bit too simple, which is why I got some additional elements to put on the left side of this thumbnail. So what I just did is I added 3 images of weapon loadouts from the game into Photopea. For what I need out of these images is only actually one specific thing, this box highlighted in orange. So in order to grab this, we're gonna select the rectangle select option. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna carefully highlight a perfect rectangle around this element. Once it's selected, I'm going to right click and we're gonna inverse the selection and then select delete. We have to rasterize it first, okay. Select delete again, and all of the content that was not this selection will be deleted. I'm gonna rinse and repeat that same process for these other 2 images here. And now I'm just gonna stack these on up. And all I'm doing here, guys, is selecting Command or Control T on my keyboard, going into free transform mode and just getting these to the size that I want them to be. Okay, that looks pretty good, but one thing I'm not liking is my weapon progression. First, let's make sure we have the correct layer selected, which is this one right here. And then we're gonna go over to the left-hand side, select this rectangle selection option. And then I'm just gonna highlight all of this. And then we're gonna right click and then layer via copy. And that will create a new layer right here that we can then select. If we go back over to the select option over here, I can grab it, move it around, and that way I can give the illusion that my leveling up of this weapon is actually complete, when in reality, it's really not. Let's clean this up by selecting the eraser, and then I'm just gonna chop off the end of that. Look at that, it's already blended in really nicely, honestly. So now I'm just gonna go over here, right click, duplicate the layer again, and just rinse and repeat this cycle. It's best to have any layers that you're copying to put over other layers above the layers that you're working on. See? So now that I did that, I want to make sure that I'm still on that top layer copy that I'm working with here. And I can go and drag this on to the spot that I need it to. It's not long enough, so I'm just gonna keep duplicating the layer until we have all these bars filled out. Okay, with that done, another little hack that I wanna do for these weapons that you see here is to make them bigger. I'd rather not have all that empty gray space that could be utilized. So what I'm gonna do is with that top layer weapon selected, I'm just gonna use this rectangle again to select a specific area, which is just gonna be this weapon. Gonna highlight that, we're gonna right click, we're gonna layer via copy, and we're gonna blow this up. Let's make it bigger. Please make it bigger. Just like that. We can actually clean this up a little bit. Let's try the magic wand tool here, and we're gonna just highlight certain areas to delete. Looks like a decent cutout on us. Let's see what it looked like. What do we think, guys? I don't think that's too bad. And then for that background layer, let's actually deselect layer 2 so that the bigger gun hides itself. And then on that original gun layer here, I want to make sure that we don't see this. So the best way to do this is by going over here to the spot healing brush tool again. Let's make this tool brush a little bit bigger. I just right clicked to open this menu on up. And now we're just gonna highlight this. And then now this should all go gray. There we go. And now we can put our weapon back on top, and it looks pretty fluid. You know, it's a little rough spots. So typically I'm gonna wanna erase those. Overall, looks pretty good. I'm gonna repeat the same thing for the other guns here. Okay guys, slowly but surely, this is starting to come together, but since we just did so much work I want to make sure that we don't lose it. So it's very important that we save our progress as we move along. So I'm going to go up here to file and I'm going to save as a PSD project. So now just in case there's a crash, we won't lose our project. Next, what we're going to do is add text to this thumbnail. And to do that, we can go to the type tool that's right here. So when we select that, just click anywhere into the thumbnail. That's going to create a new text layer and just type out what you want to have in this thumbnail. So we're going to say best. That'll be the first word. I'm going to make sure that that layer is on the top, by the way. And we're going to type another text layer here below this thing on up. Of course, if you want, you can just set your text to be a bigger font size. I'm also going to put a little bit of a tilt on this by just selecting the outside of that and just rotating it. The one other element I'm going to add to this thumbnail is the Black Ops 6 logo. So you can pull that actually online. Make sure it is a transparent image that has as many pixels as possible. That way you can avoid having blurry elements in your thumbnail to make it look more high quality. I downloaded one here off of Google. It's a PNG. I'm just gonna drag that right onto my project here. I'm gonna resize this. And what I'm actually going to do here, and I've seen it in other people's thumbnails, is just having Black Ops 6 there. It'll be less text and wordiness for viewers to read. So we're just gonna right click, layer via copy. I'm gonna make sure we move this layer on up so that it is more visible. And in the original layer here, I'm just gonna delete. And now I'm just gonna work with this layer. So I'm just gonna resize this so that it can be easily seen. Right now, this image is kind of flat in my opinion, with the exception of the weapon here. So let's actually start with the weapon. I'm gonna make sure that this layer is selected. And I'm gonna go over here where the layer is selected, right click, and we're gonna go over to blending options. When we do that, you're gonna get this layer styling box that's gonna open. And we're gonna first add a drop shadow to this image. As you can see, it already made it pop a little bit more. The sizing, I think, is not too bad. I'm happy with that for now. I could still make changes to it later. And now the next thing I'm gonna do is go to image, and we're gonna go to adjustments, and we're gonna go to brightness and contrast, a little bit more contrast. I don't think it really needs much more brightness. I think the brightness is pretty solid. Looks good. Let's select OK. Let's go back to image adjustments. And this time we're gonna do hue and saturation. And we're gonna add a little bit of saturation to this to make it look more colorful than it already is. Just be careful not to overdo it. I'm liking the way that looks. Select OK. I'm gonna go up to filters now, and I'm gonna add a sharpen filter to this, just to make it a little bit more crispy looking. All right, next I'm gonna hit these weapon boxes. Right now they're looking very gray. You know, they've been gray the whole time here. So I'm gonna select the first one here, and we're gonna go up to image. We're gonna go to adjustments. We're gonna do the brightness and contrast. And let's make this bad boy a little bit brighter. Let's see it. Let's be able to see the gun, you know? I think 70 looks pretty good. We're gonna select OK, and I wanna make sure that we match the rest of the layers that are involved here across all of these gun boxes. That means not just the box that it's in, but also the bar that's going across down here, and the same thing for these other two. Let's move on to the text now. Since we're dealing with multiple setups, I actually wanna add the S to this, because you know it's plural here. We're not dealing with just one setup. These are multiple setups. So we're gonna make that tweak and then recenter that. But now I'm gonna add some boldness to this. So let's go over here to our layers. Let's start off with the text that says best. Right click that, and we're gonna go to blending options. And within here, we're gonna add a stroke to this. We're gonna make this stroke a little bit bigger. Right now it's 3 pixels. I think 15 looks pretty good. Okay, and then we're gonna do the same thing with the text that says setups as well. And if we select stroke, it will copy the exact same stroke settings that we just used. Let's go back over to best. Let's go to blending options. And this time let's do a gradient overlay. Kind of cool looking, right? Well, let's adjust this gradient. Let's select it. Let's make sure that the black square is selected, and then we're gonna change the color. That's gonna open up the color picker menu where you can choose whichever color you would like. But if we go outside the color picker and we go within the project where our thumbnail is, we can actually pull the color of the Black Ops 6 logo. So I'm gonna select OK there. And then for this second side where it's white, we're gonna go back into the color picker here. I wanna make it close to orange, but of course not exactly orange. You know, dark orange and yellow go really nice together. So we're kind of pulling together here. Did it just crash? Wait, reload. Oh. What? Luckily, here is my project. This is why you save, guys. And we're gonna copy that same gradient. There we go. Okay, save. Put the S back on that. Now for the Black Ops 6 logo, I'm actually gonna make a slight adjustment here with this logo. Make sure that that layer is selected, which it is. We're gonna right click it, go to blending options, and this time I'm gonna do a color overlay. So when we get into this, it's gonna turn the whole thing black. I actually don't want the whole thing to be black. I actually want it to be white, and select OK. And then let's do a drop shadow. And it's not gonna be this kind of glowy, halo-y, darkish looking drop shadow that you see now. I'm actually gonna increase the opacity here. The spread is gonna be a lot stronger so that it looks much more bold and block style. Then we can adjust the sizing here to what we like. It's basically kind of like a stroke effect almost, but a little bit different at the same time as there's more angle to this bold effect. I'm liking the way that this is looking. We're gonna select OK. And we gotta fix the 6, obviously. We can't just be like, yeah, this is the logo, because it has to be recognizable to the masses. So to do that, let's make sure our magic wand tool is selected. Let's highlight the 6 within this layer, and then we're gonna right click and then layer via copy. And then we're gonna right click that new layer that was just copied, go to blending options, and we're gonna turn off the color overlay effect because the color overlay will always precede and override any other colors that you add to your layer. Now that that's done, let's also turn off drop shadow as we don't need that twice, and then select OK. Now I wanna make sure we get that separation between the foreground and the background of this image. So what we're gonna do here, I'm gonna go back to my select tool and then just make sure we have that bottom layer selected, which we do. And we're gonna go to filter, and then we're gonna go to Gaussian blur. And this allows us to kind of get a nice little effect here for our background. So we can go with this, see, just like so. You know, maybe 2 pixel blur here. Select OK. And now that I'm thinking of it, we can also add drop shadows to these boxes over here too, to make these stand out just a little bit more. I'm also gonna brighten up this backdrop as well a little bit. Okay, and then a little bit of saturation here as well. And there we go. What do we think, guys? This is thumbnail number 1 in this video. So if we wanted to quickly pull together an additional thumbnail using those face pictures that I took earlier, let's see what we can put together. I'm gonna take just these 2 images of my backdrop and my favorite picture that I took of myself and pull these on into Photopea. Let's bring these 2 layers to the top. So they were put at the bottom here. I'm gonna grab them by selecting both of them, and we're gonna roll our way all the way up to the top layer here. I am gonna wanna hide a few elements here just so I have a little bit of a cleaner space to work with. That being these elements here over on the left with the weapons. So I'm not gonna want these anymore, so I'm actually gonna hide all of these elements. And we had a lot of them here, by the way. I'm even gonna hide best setup too. So let's first start off with my backdrop. Let's hide my image for now. And I'm gonna put this into position. So I'm gonna Control or Command T this and just put it on down here. Let's give it a slight angle. So I'm gonna use the outside edges here to make that work. Next, let's go into our blending options. So we're just gonna right click on this layer, go to blending options, and we are gonna add a stroke outline to this. But instead of it being black, I want the fill type to be white. So we're just gonna go down here, select where it says black right now, and then we'll just make it white, just like so. And we can also adjust the size of that border right here, make it just a little bit less. At 11, I think looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and select OK. Let's also add in some color to this. So we'll go to our adjustments. Let's go to brightness and contrast first. Brightness on up, have a little contrast. And then we will go back to image adjustments and go to hue and saturation. Increase the saturation here. The hue, actually, I'm liking this. A little bit of experimentation, but it's working. This blue light is actually matching the gun. So I think that contrasts really, really nicely. I'm gonna select OK. And now we're gonna bring back our face cam image. I'm gonna make this the very top layer, like so. And now with this layer selected, I'm gonna go to select, and we're gonna go to remove background so that we don't have to manually cut it out. So let's go ahead and do that. Select OK. You may have to watch an advertisement and our background will be removed. And now what I'm gonna do is just place myself into this box as natural looking as possible. Yeah, I think that is looking pretty decent. Obviously we have these edges here we need to clean up. The way I like to do that is by going over to these set of tools here where you see the lasso. You should be able to find something called the polygonal lasso select. So if you select that, you'll be able to draw lines here because this needs to be perfectly cut out. See what, whoops, wrong. That's why it's important to have the right layers selected. See, it had the cutout selected, but I need to have the image over here selected. So make sure that that's selected correctly. And now when you select delete, you can rasterize the layer, press delete again, and then it will be gone. And this is what you want it to look like. I'm trying to make it look like I'm inside the image, but coming out of it at the same time. Some other things I'm gonna wanna fix here are the graphics on my shirt. So really, when you're taking these images, you want to wear very neutral clothing. Having black shirts as a YouTuber is gonna be your best friend, especially for thumbnails like these. You really don't wanna have busy looking clothing. So luckily this is easy to remove. I can just go over here and select my spot healing brush tool. And then I'm gonna right click, make sure the size of this is a little bit better. That looks good. Hardness I'm fine with. And then we'll just highlight over this section. And when you do that, look at that, voila, it is gone. Now I'm just gonna make some fine tune adjustments with my face image here. Brighten it up just a tad, add some contrast. You know, instead of it looking kind of washed out and gray, I wanna make it look like it's popping in your face. And then I'm gonna actually play with the vibrancy this time. I think of vibrancy as more of a color enhancement with the existing saturation, if that makes sense. That looks pretty good. And since I'm a black dude here, I'm gonna adjust the coloring here just a little bit so that we look as natural as possible. I don't want my skin to look too yellowy or greenish at the same time. I like the way I'm looking. Select OK. Still on this layer, I'm gonna right click, go to blending options, and we're gonna go to drop shadow because I want this thing to continue to pop out a little bit. We'll make this one a little bit more subtle. All right, that looks pretty good. And just give the image a double check. Make sure it actually looks like how it should. Like obviously, I don't want this stuff to be in here. We need to clean that up. I'm gonna select the polygonal lasso select, and I'm gonna just smoothly go over and cut this part out. This is just an area that the background removal tool missed. Let me delete that, remove any lingering remnants there. And then also here in my glasses, connect the end of the lasso and delete. Anything that looks weird, we gotta adjust it. So I have my eraser tool selected here. I'm going to decrease the sizing of the tool now. Hardness, I'm going to, what the heck? Right click. Hardness, I want this to be a little less because it's right next to my face. So I want that to have more of a soft look than like a harsh look. And then we're just gonna go here and trim this part away. And same for this part here. Get rid of those dark black spots because it just looks weird. And you know what? One other thing, I think I want the weapon to be above my face layer. So I'm gonna take this, just drag it on up. I'm gonna see what this looks like. Yeah, much better. There we have a B thumbnail. 2 thumbnails, 1 video. When you're ready to save your thumbnail, just go over to File, then go to Export As, and then I would save it as a JPEG image right here. So select that. You can give it a new name if you'd like. I'd keep the width and the height the same. And then down over here, you can set how high you want the export quality to be when you save it. What do you guys think? Would you go with thumbnail A or thumbnail B that we did in this video? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Thank you for staying to the end. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.